Karja, my friends. I'm Luke. Welcome to the Healing Forest podcast. This is a space where we unearth how nature has rooted and supported our guests to blossom and grow within their own ecosystem and life. Our guest today is the author of The Blissful Breath, business owner of Breathe with Niall, a level 3 Wim Hof instructor, only a handful in the world, multiple podcast host, father of 4, loving husband to Josie, free spirit, and all year round shorts wearer. So, welcome, Niall OMhurchu. Kunistataw, how are you?
I'm very well, and that was a lovely introduction. So thank you very much for that. Josie will be delighted to get a name check there as well.
Very good. You anything stand out there that you'd be proud of within that list?
I think I'm most proud of as life progresses, things that I become proud of kind of fade away into significance after a while. Except, so you try to achieve. So let's say with the Wim Hof work, you try to achieve level 1 and level 2 and level 3, and it's significant at the time. But as you continue on, you think, oh, that's really important, but it's not really important. I suppose on the list there, what really stands out to me is being a dad is what I'm proud of. Being a husband is what I'm proud of, and the little family we have, they're probably my biggest achievement. If I can get them to adulthood without being, as I say to them, look, I know I'm strict, but I'm trying to make sure you're not assholes, So if I can get them to a state where they're adults as good people, that would be my greatest achievement, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, I resonate with that. Yeah, I'd love to drop in just a little bit deeper into the space. So just kind of going back to when we met earlier in the forest, allowing ourselves to cast our mind back to that time, reminding ourselves of the innate connection with the world around us. Within the forest earlier, with the creaking of the trees, feeling the power in the wind, in the breeze, and the leaves underfoot, the chill on the skin, but still everything working in harmony. Niall, what is nature to you?
Nature is everything, really. Sometimes we forget that we are a part of nature. And I think the work I do and the work you do in the Healing Forest reminds people that we're just part of this whole. We are nature. The cold and the breathing and being outside brings us back to our true nature. So there's a few meanings of it. There's the world that surrounds us, but it's also the inner world. I like to remind people when we're in very cold conditions trying to warm up that we are mammals after all, and mammals warm up from the inside out. So we have a very specific exercise to do that. But I think nature is, for me, it's so important to be outside in nature as much as possible. But trying to live in the flow of nature as well. So you mentioned in the introduction, and I see you're in shorts now today as well. I feel the more we are exposed to nature, the more we get a sense of how it moves and changes, like the seasons, the coldness, the short evenings getting longer, all of those things. I think the more we are for me, the more I am in harmony with that, in balance with that, the better I feel. And that to me is nature, finding that flow.
Beautiful, yeah. So there's lots of kind of breathwork instructors. It's become more popular now and more accessible. But I am aware of all the vast wisdom and knowledge that you have, and the different modalities. So I'm looking to explore where we were at like years ago, so 10,000 years ago, 8,000, whatever it was, what's our breath like then? You know, why do we need someone to guide us here, or why do we do breath work now? Was there a conscious kind of breath going on before, or through our ancestors? Were they just tuned in on a level that we can't kind of relate to, maybe?
It's a beautiful question. And I think it ties us right back into our ancestors, and it ties us back into the past. But I'll start with the present first. So once a month, myself and a great friend of mine, Christine, organised a full moon healing circle on Killiney Beach. So we meet on the beach, we do some breathing, we do some yoga, people hop in the sea, we have a great laugh. And when we're on the beach like that, and sometimes during the summer, there might be 1,200 people on the beach, and we're just breathing together. And like, there's loads of science now to show us why breathing together is so important, and it actually bonds people together. But I often stand on the beach under the full moon looking at everybody doing this, thinking, we are not the first to do this. Like this, we didn't invent this. We have just rediscovered this. The elemental feel of when it doesn't have to be 1,000 people. It can be 2 people, 3 people. When we get together and breathe, something changes in us. Now you could say, oh, well, that's the same when any humans to get together for anything. And it's true. When we're talking, we're breathing in a different way. When we're singing, we're breathing in a different way. So there's loads of versions of breathing. And when we come together, we are inevitably breathing in a different way together. So it's different by yourself than when it is with a group. So I don't think we've rediscovered anything recently. I think we've rediscovered things recently that were always present. And when we go back to our ancestors now, if we jump back thousands and thousands of years, our breathing was very, very similar, I would imagine, because how we breathe is dictated by the pressure we feel. So when a person is feeling no pressure, and they're feeling loose, and their body is soft, and their mind is open, and they're not under any kind of stress or strain, our breathing is generally calm and deep and soft. When that pressure builds and becomes something that pushes us out of balance, becomes stress, our mind starts to focus on the worst case scenario, that becomes anxiety. Our breathing then changes. It becomes shallow. It becomes erratic. It becomes something that's not in balance anymore. And those two kind of stages, those two kind of phases, when we're breathing calmly and gently, and when we're breathing erratically and out of balance, they are dictated by pressure, and they are dictated by our nervous system. So our nervous system switches between these two states, the sympathetic or stressful state, the parasympathetic or peaceful state, all the time, and it naturally does that. So our ancestors, were they sitting on Killiney Beach 10,000 years ago breathing? Yeah, they probably were. But they might have been in a different kind of gathering. But when they were relaxed, they were breathing like we breathe now. When they were under pressure, and they were under a lot of pressure, they were breathing like we breathe now. The pressure, the type of pressure might be different. We're no longer out hunting and gathering as much. We have different types of pressure. But it still affects the nervous system in the same way as it did 10,000 years ago. Likewise, when we're relaxing now, we're no longer in a cave. Our ancestors, when we were in the cave, could relax and move down into this parasympathetic part of the nervous system, and their breathing would get softer and their digestion would start to work better. And they were in this kind of the opposite of fight or flight, which is rest and recover, rest and digest. That was their sanctuary. Our sanctuaries are probably different now. We don't find a cave and sit in anymore. But how we are now, the environment in which causes us to breathe in a certain way has changed to our ancestors, but how we breathe is the same.
And with those gatherings, then, are there any? You taught Reiki before. Like, is there any other modalities that you're drawing upon, energy-wise, or linguistic wise or, hypnosis wise? Is there a rhythm to what else is going on?
Yeah. When I started out in this kind of world a long time ago, 26 years ago, I used to see the different ways of healing or the different ways of helping people as very distinct from each other. So I would say, look, I'm doing Reiki now. This is herbalism. This is shamanic healing. And I had them all kind of broken down into very specific ways of doing things. But over the years and the decades, what I found is that they've actually just become part of what I do. So I mightn't be saying to myself, okay, I am now going to use a technique from this way of healing or this way of helping people. But when you use them enough and they become part of you, they just become part of what you do. So when I'm standing on the beach and we're breathing together, all the years and decades of training and practice are coming out in that moment, in some kind of mix that's kind of unique to that moment. Like with anybody, like we are a combination of all our experiences in each moment. The combination might be changing as we're kind of adapting to the situation. So for me, they started to all combine together years and years ago. So when someone comes and breathes with me or with somebody else, it's a unique experience based on that person's, experience. So I often think that when we're practicing something like meditation, breathing, or whatever it is, and we're teaching it, the depth of our own practice and understanding comes across in how we share that with people. So the way I teach breathing now is totally different than I would have 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So all the different modalities, all the different ways of healing, all the different ways of helping people, as we understand them more and our insights deepen, then we can turn to people and share those with them. So it's changing all the time.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? The evolving of the practice, yeah. Who was your main role model in your life, male role model?
I think there's levels to this question. I think on one level, as I moved through different phases of my life, you would see male role models, say teachers or coaches, come and go, depending. So when I'm playing basketball, I would have been obsessed with Michael Jordan. As I moved out of that, you start to kind of feel guidance from other people. They change. But I think beneath it all, someone like my dad would be the one that's constant. And I didn't realize that at the time. When you're a child, you think your parent is capable of everything. Then you become a teenager and you think they don't know anything, And then as I became a father myself, I realized, God, if I can only be half the dad he was, I would be delighted. So it doesn't mean we don't have difference of opinions or different kind of agree to disagree on things. But the more I get older, the more my family grows up, I realize how lucky I was to have a dad like I do. And for me, that role model, that influence, that mentor, that's the constant.
Yeah, the understanding of mentor held me back for quite a while. Yeah. Then it got reframed for me, by Russell Brand, actually, and a book that he has called Mentors. And the person doesn't need to be the perfect human, your mentor, and you can, they can be amazing and inspirational to you in just one aspect, but they don't need to be, and that's inspiring to you to improve your own kind of, that area in your life.
Yeah.
But you'd be waiting a long time if you're waiting for someone that was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So, more recently, I've learned a huge amount from Wim Hof. For people who have seen Wim Hof online, he's this big, charismatic character. But when you meet Wim Hof, it's very clear that he is just himself. And you can see these amazing strengths, but you can also see these parts of him. You wouldn't want him organizing very much, or you wouldn't want him kind of running your logistics, for example. But that doesn't matter, because as you said, there's these aspects that we have in ourselves that are the things that can help other people. We don't need to be good at everything. In fact, we're most definitely not. So as you said, if you're waiting for the perfect mentor to arrive, you might be waiting a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was giving this some thought the other day, and I thought I was thinking about you, and I was thinking what the impact that you have had. And I just want to say thanks for being Irish. I was like thinking there's similarities there. Who was it? And then Katie Taylor came to mind. It was like how proud I am of you, and the impact you can have in Ireland is amazing because of the reach of it being an island. And then the people are so open, and the fact that you are like a leading light in breathwork. So this is not like I know a guy who knows a guy. This is like direct people that have had a conversation with me, and they wouldn't be here today if that wasn't for you. So going to an event that you've hosted, ringing you, connecting with you through Instagram, and you responding, and you being there to connect with them and give them guidance, or just listen to them in whatever way, or after an event. But you have impacted people's lives, and I know those people. I know some of those people, and I've heard the stories firsthand. And they were suicidal previously until they found the breath, and you helped them find the breath. And obviously you can go down the non-egoic route, and sure, they found the breath themselves and they had to go to the event themselves and all. But I just want to go beyond that and show my appreciation to you for doing what you do and having such a huge impact with people and basically saving lives. So
like that. Thank you very much for saying that. That means an awful lot to me. Most often when you're talking to people, you don't really know what's going on in their lives. So for me, my mission has always been to try and help people in whatever way I can. So to know that inadvertently that's happening is very, it's very good to hear that.
There was a period in my time when I discovered Wim Hof, probably 5 years ago or something like that, I would say. And I used to go down. I was under a lot of stress in my life. My daughter was acting out in many ways. So I went down to Killiney Beach, and I used to listen to Wim Hof on YouTube. It was 19 minutes, I think it was, 3 rounds, and then get in the sea. And I did this on my own for maybe a year, 3 or 4 times a week. And the journey and the whole process was so life-changing, of like breathing in the car and not caring what people thought when they were walking by, like, the simplest of things like that,
Yeah.
So then I'm realizing, I get a great benefit from this, but yet I'm holding myself back because of people walking by, and is this the way I want to continue living my life? Mm-hmm. But there was a whole mini death experience going on each time. And then I was asking the question, well, maybe I don't like myself, because this is pain. It's pain related. Even the breathing, because it was going deep then, it was kind of overwhelming, the breath. So then the pain of the cold sea, obviously, that's a different thing. But is there an escalation as there would be with adrenaline, you know, like, oh, I need to go faster, I need to go. Is there an escalation of the pain? Do you get addicted to kind of a pain aspect, or do you classify it as pain?
Well, I love that story because in essence, it talks about one of the most important parts of our experience as humans, and that is what we think other people are saying about us. You know, the pressure of other people witnessing what we're doing. So this image of you in the car breathing is something that I love, because as we start to get into the breathing and as we start to get into the cold, especially with the Wim Hof method, and one of the ways in which we warm up after the Wim Hof method is this legendary horse stance, this kind of low squatting movement that looks like some exotic kind of dance, you know, and we add the voice in there, and, you know, people are very self-conscious of it. But over time, the breathing starts to peel back these layers in us. Over time, the cold starts to peel back these layers in us. And something like the horse stance, after a while, you don't care what people think about you when you're on Killiney Beach, jumping up and down. I was at a retreat there a few days ago, and we had 16 people from all over the place, never met each other, came to the retreat. And within 24 hours, they were saying, Jesus, we're having such great crack. And they were out the ice baths, jumping around. And they're saying, we're not even drinking. We're jumping around. We didn't even know each other. We're having this great time. And in a way, what the breathing and the cold does for us is it allows us to let go. That pain that you're talking about there, that pain can be a lot of things. And as we go deeper into the breathing, it starts to allow us to let go. So we let go of, oh my God, people are looking at me. After a while, you don't care if people are looking at you. You let go of whatever tension or pain we might be holding in the body. And ultimately, the more we let go, the more we enjoy everything. The more we enjoy breathing in the car and saying, fuck it, I don't care if I'm breathing in the car in a car park. The more we enjoy jumping into the sea. People used to say to me, you're mad for getting into the sea. But we enjoy it. You know, we don't care what people think after a while. And the breath, and there's no limit to the experiences we can have with the breathing. There's no limit to it. It's infinite. When we think that we have gone as deep as we can go, there's more there. When we take the breath into the cold and combine them, it brings us back to this moment, the beginning of everything. And by that I mean, everybody, you and I, everyone in this room here, have a shared experience. And that is before we're born and we're in the mother's womb, the mother is doing everything for us, including breathing for us. We are not breathing. She is breathing. And in there, we're protected, we're safe, we're warm. As we are born, whatever way we're born, in whatever country, whatever part of the world we're born in, it's a shocking experience. But the most shocking part of it is the trauma of the cold that we feel when we're born. The cold we feel when we're born, this attack on us from the cold, is the thing that triggers us to take our first breath. That then ignites this chain reaction down through the body where our lungs start to open, our heart actually changes kind of shape for a moment, and we become alive. And that's from the cold, and it triggers our breath. So when you talk about sitting in the car in Killiney, breathing, and then getting into the cold, on one hand, we're talking about this very specific technique that you're listening to on YouTube. But on the other hand, the deeper part, you are returning to the very beginning of your life. We are all returning to the beginning of our life when we start to breathe and use the cold. And from my experience, when we do that, eventually that brings us around to being whole again. So yes, there might be pain on the way to that, but the breath and the cold from the beginning are intrinsically linked together. And even if people are listening to saying, oh yeah, but I fucking hate the cold. It was there at the beginning of all our lives. It brought us alive. So we can spend the rest of our life recoiling from that primal healing force, or we can learn to use it as a force for good in our lives, even if we don't like it. And so that experience that you had in the car there for me encapsulates nearly the whole human condition in the car park.
Is there like a go-to breath that you go to? I know you have a general awareness of your breath and you catch yourself. I'm sure that you kind of catch yourself and you're present with the breath, but is there a go-to that you go to for the breath, like before bed or before a stressful moment, or is it different things for different moments?
I had somebody ask me a similar question very recently, and they were confused. They were saying, oh my God, I've looked online. There's so many ways of breathing. Which one do I use for which thing? So I'll answer your specific question in a second. But if anybody's listening and thinking the same thing, like what do I do with the breath that's here all the time? How do I, on the most basic level, even bringing our attention to our breath, even for a minute, begins to slow it down, begins to calm the breath. How we breathe is how we feel. So if our breathing is quick and fast and erratic, that's how we feel. If we bring our attention to our breath, even for a moment, it immediately starts to change. It immediately becomes a little softer, a little deeper. Then we start to change. We feel a little calmer, a little more peaceful. So for heading into a difficult situation, into a stressful situation, we can change that a little bit. We can focus on our breath for a moment. We can feel it. We can feel that change in it. But by focusing on our exhale and continuing to focus on our exhale and elongating that exhale a little bit, that then starts to unwind the nervous system and helps us grab control of those feelings of anxiety or nervousness before a difficult thing that we're going to do. So that's one example of how to use it. Anything that forces us into a state where we feel uncertain or fearful or worried or frightened, focusing on that exhale will change how we feel. Before going to bed was another example you had there. Before going to bed, just bring the attention back to the breath. Just listen to the breath. Even that starts to slow it down. But if you're lying there in bed and you're not feeling particularly peaceful, and maybe there's something that's running through your head and you can't go to sleep, come back to that long exhale. We don't have to be in a situation like going live on TV or about to go into a difficult meeting. We don't have to be actually physically doing something like that to feel those same feelings of anxiety and stress. We can think ourselves into those ones. So if we can think ourselves into it, the breath helps us think ourselves back out of it. So focusing on that long exhale is nearly the remedy to all our problems.
Yeah, like the second you were talking about the breath, then it makes me aware of my breath. It's if you can cultivate that inner dialogue of awareness, to be present with the breath and elongate that's a good one. Because as you were saying there, then I was visualizing myself going to bed tonight and trying to breathe out more than I'm kind of breathing in, you know, to let the stress.
Yeah, and like we know biologically that it works. You know, it works. It's probably the most effective way of breathing to deal with stress, to deal with anything. As we start to focus on that long exhale, we move more into the parasympathetic, peaceful part of the nervous system. Vagus nerve activates, drops the heart rate, softens the body, and helps us move into that place where we feel safe again. And when we feel safe, then the body can heal itself, the body can restore itself, and eventually we can nod off to sleep.
So during stressful times, let's say casting memory back, you've twins. I'm sure that was a tough kind of moment.
That was a difficult phone call.
It's still a tough time a few years later. But even, I suppose, maybe the third or fourth kid is maybe a little bit easier because you know you have an idea from the first two, but maybe the first child, then, you know, the uncertainty and all that. So when he was born, was there a going to nature? Was there like a going to the sea? Was there like, what was your safe place, or whatever term you want to put on it?
Yeah, our first child, he's 14 now. His entrance into the world was extraordinarily dramatic. So he was born at just about 29 weeks, so way too early. He was about 3 pounds. He looked like a little bird, and he spent his first 3 weeks in an incubator in the Coombe Hospital. And it was, you know, it was an earth-shattering experience, those few weeks. But within that, as you said, there was lots to learn, you know, and there was, I remember the first night in the incubator, I was watching him. So this is in the, what do they call it? The intensive care unit in the Coombe. And this tiny little bird of a human is there fighting for his life. And I remember thinking to myself, how does he know to fight? You know, why is he fighting? You know, he could have just slipped back away to wherever he came from. And looking at him there has always stuck with me. You know, this idea that we want to live. We want this experience, whatever this experience might be. And so in those 3 weeks in the hospital, there was very little, as you were describing there, a place for us to go to deal with it. You know, Josie was downstairs. We happened to live beside the Coombe, thankfully, at that time. So we were in all the time. But you know, hospitals are they're amazing for emergencies, but they're not a healing place. So those 3 weeks we were just in hospitals, dealing with all that stuff. So there was nowhere for us to go except inside. So we could only find a sanctuary within ourselves, you know, which is, you could argue, is where we always find it. So in those moments, sitting in a corridor outside the emergency unit, or, you know, downstairs in the Starbucks, it was learning just to use the breath to let go a little bit, you know, because obviously as a first-time parent, you have no idea what's going on. And as a parent in a situation like that, you're hearing other parents being told their child has just died. You're hearing all these things in the emergency unit. So it's a time of extreme uncertainty. But again, just having you don't have the kind of option, because you're exhausted and you're sitting there and you're looking for something to help you. And again, by just breathing for a few minutes in Starbucks, you know, that was the place that I would go to help me kind of recuperate before I went back upstairs to the 5th floor and had to, you know, experience this whole thing again. And the happy ending is that he came out quickly, and he's a big bruiser of a young man now. But like all difficult situations, there are profound things to learn in the midst of it, including that idea that if I could have got to the sea, I would have got to the sea. You know, that's where I'm born by the sea, raised by the sea. But in that situation, it was too far from the Coombe, so we had to use the breath instead.
I got a sense of his, of his energy, of his presence. I've never even seen him or seen you with him or heard him or anything like that. But there's like a term for children that, so which one of your child is the anchor? So an anchor is like a point of reference for how your family is doing. So my second is the one for that. And I kind of got the sense that there was something different. As obviously they're all special, but there is, for me, my second one, I keep a bit more of an eye on, you know, and I check in and how he is emotionally and spiritually and mentally and physically as a gauger for the family, you know, and how we're doing as a unit. Which child do you feel is kind of that?
Great question.
I don't know if that makes sense, does it?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Does someone spring to mind when I was saying that?
Yeah. So I think I love that idea, that the child would be a gauge for where the family is as a unit. And I think Blaze, who's our first one, is definitely that. His name is Blaze. It's from the Irish, actually, from Blas and Blahan, and it kind of morphed over years into Blaze, many thousands of years ago. But it also has the English meaning of it, which is like to blaze a trail. He's always the pioneer. He's always the first one to do things. And when he is in balance, we're all kind of feeling like that. But that idea of the anchor is a fascinating idea, and he is now entering mid-teens, and all the hormones and everything that comes with that, and in a way they're all just following, and we're all in this new journey. I actually used to think I was a good parent to the four of them up until about they were 11 or 12. After 12 years, you feel like you've got the skills now and experience, and now it's like a new game entirely. They're nearly all teenagers, and it's just like I'm a parent again, trying to figure this game out. So come back to me in 10 years, and I'll have another answer for you.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's interesting. Otherwise, I feel, same with kind of like the breath, where you bring an awareness to a focal point, and with that, it's kind of like I was firefighting a bit until I heard that kind of terminology, and I'm like, oh, okay, so my 6-year-old is, quite spirited, let's say, expressive, so then this is how I deal with him. And then my wife, she's a bit, so there's all the beliefs. But then when there's a shifting of that to kind of, there's a different gauge, there's an anchor. And then I see the development in him. So he's 12 now, but he's a young man. And it's a good reference point to kind of just check in with how I'm doing and how things are progressing and how he is developing, and the impact that he has influences on kind of even on his 18-year-old sister, and his 6-year-old, so there's a whole unit there, instead of being dragged around all the time to different kind of
So your oldest is 18.
Yeah.
So you've been through the teenage years.
She started her teenage years, when she was 12. I'll never forget it. And it was life-changing. So that's why we set up the Healing Forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was incredible, maybe 4 years of stuff that made no sense to me whatsoever.
A whole new world.
Yeah. Oh, it was... it was life-changing, as I say. So I stopped. I put in place, changing to leaving the construction industry, and from bringing her to maybe 10 or 12 different kind of counselors and psychoanalysts and psychotherapists and stuff like that. And none of them working, and her never wanting to go back ever again.
Okay.
And, the obvious thing of like, how can they help me? They don't even know me,
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're forming a relationship here, and, all the rational crap that goes on.
She was cutting through all that stuff.
So exactly, and she made me see that all that was bullshit. All my explanation and in the head process was, So I've no words, but reflecting back on it, I feel like you were kind of saying it as in like maybe a bit of apprehension about something teenage years, but an advice kind of aspect, I suppose, is that you're holding space as you do so well, for 1,200 people, basically, and does change slightly when you care so much about them. So I find it a good reminder that I am just holding space for them. I've
kind of slowly come to that realization. Our girls are nearly 10, but they've been women, 27-year-olds, since they were born. They came out just like these fully formed women. So it's been Yeah, so your description is perfect. I try to kind of set the boundaries and hold the boundaries and let them kind of run between, run and push against them.
Yeah, that was the thing. When she was 12 or 13, there was a time of about 2 years that I had to, it helped me anyway to accept that she's a woman now.
Yeah.
Because when I was in parent mode, I had to teach her something.
Yeah.
And then there was talking at and then not being received. And then there was talking more at her because I noticed that she wasn't receiving. So it was like, I need to talk more at her at a higher level.
Louder and faster.
It's like, loud, yeah, exactly. I'm going to push this on. But when I wouldn't dare talk to someone that I loved, a friend or my wife in that way, because there's the respect and there's like, but when the parent mind of mine kicked in, it was like, no, she needs this and I know better. And, but then it switched the whole relationship. I saw her as a woman. So regardless of age. So then she left school and she got a job. And then she's like managing now and she's on her like 4th car that she's bought and she's doing psychology and like she's doing a master. So it,
wow.
It just projects. But I felt on reflection now, years later, that she had a divine path or like, she was listening to herself, having these outbursts and kind of expressing herself the way that she felt was the way to do it and finding herself, and I was restricting that.
Yeah.
And I kept on trying to restrict it for safety reasons.
Yeah.
So once I let go, then there was a blossoming.
And that comes back to what we were saying about the breathing in the cold. It's about letting go. Like you can't fight the cold. You can't push against the cold. You just have to surrender to it. And I think that's, for me, was one of the biggest lessons of the cold. And it's a lesson that applies to, I think, everything, parenting including.
Yeah. I did the kind of online Wim Hof training and I saw that the next stage was basically to go to Poland.
Yeah.
So I applied and they were like, oh yeah, we're moving it to Spain and it's 150 people. And I was like, okay, so this is not, so I got put off that. And now I think that they're doing the Poland thing again, as far as I'm aware. Is that right?
It's changing. So the academy is now moving to the Pyrenees. So I've been there. I'm actually going there in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's on the kind of Spanish border. It's this unbelievable place. So at the bottom of the Pyrenees, even in the summertime, it might be 40 degrees. And at the top, it's full of snow. Huh. So you hike up from one world to the other. It's a very unusual experience.
I think I'll revisit it because it's obviously saying quite a lot about me and what I was looking for. I was looking for this extreme challenge kind of, that was going to evoke change in me.
So there's probably two things going on, and I think this is what they've tried to do. When I was learning to be a Wim Hof instructor, it was very different. It was in the early days, and the experiences were kind of mixed together. So we would go to learn how to be instructors and also climb up the mountains and do all that kind of stuff in Poland. What was kind of realized over time was that to be a great instructor, you didn't need to climb up the mountain in Poland. It's a great addition to it. But if it's about being a great instructor, that's a different set of skills. So they've tried to separate the two experiences out. So that becoming an instructor now, the standard of instructors coming out the end of the academy now after the year of training is far higher than it was when I was doing it, because the teaching is of a really high quality. Everything's been learned by making mistakes and getting things right. And then there's also those experiences that you're talking about, which are the winter travel experiences. So the way it's kind of talked about now is like, if you want to be a great instructor, you go through the academy. And they even have instructors that then go on the winter travels, buying a ticket and doing all the great stuff like climbing up mountains in your shorts and, experiencing that. So I've experienced all of it. And I think what they have done is actually better for everybody, is that if you want that, and it is a life-changing experience going up the Polish mountains and that whole thing, that is accessible to everybody, and you go and buy a ticket for that. And if you want to be a great instructor, you go, and how that can also change your life, you buy a ticket for that. But they're not the same. They're not just overlapping anymore. So loads of I was actually talking to an instructor the other day, and he is buying himself a ticket for the winter travel because he wants to do all that stuff without having to do the assessments at the same time. So we had to do the assessments at the same time, as well as all the great adventurous stuff. But it's nice not to be kind of on duty. He can be off duty and he can just enjoy it.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I didn't, as I was saying, it was, to do with me. And I look back into it.
You must have had some pretty amazing snow and ice up in the forest there last month when it was cold here in Dublin. You could be running around there in your shorts.
Yeah, exactly. Running around the forest in the nude, as I usually do. We were snowed in when, I have a small little car that wouldn't be so good for the snow, but snowed in 2 days. I was snowed in. My wife has a kind of a jeepy thing. But my car couldn't get up or down the drive for 2 days. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, no, and I do visit the cold all the time, because I know what a great teacher it is with the cold showers and purposely not wearing jackets and stuff like that, So it's like, it's a beautiful relationship that I have with it. Where I was going with that one before was that from doing the breath, I noticed that, I would need to be on like the second round, I'd get to a kind of certain stage. But now it's kind of within a couple of breaths, then I get the tingling and I get the kind of visuals. And it's one of the main ways I'd visit my dad, I'd say. And he comes up and he's like in this little kind of square and he's right in front of me there. And it's like a knowing that it's him as opposed to kind of a perfect picture of him. So I'd say you must have had some wild experiences, especially when you go up the levels and you're kind of doing deeper and also different modalities. What's kind of the wildest or kind of, trippiest or most impactful kind of visual breathwork experience, you'd say?
It's a great question. I am a great person for seeing loads of visual things when I'm doing the breathing. I hear other people's, like your just description there, and I think, oh, fuck it, I'd love a bit more of that. Every time you do the breathing, it's different. Sometimes you have these profound insights into things. Sometimes you feel like you're in outer space in other dimensions. Sometimes you don't feel any of that. It's always different. And one is not necessarily better than the other. But I suppose the most profound experience I've had from the breathing. To be honest, I have profound experiences with the breathing nearly every day. Yeah. There mightn't be psychedelic experiences, but a friend of mine recently described it like little truth bombs going off in your head, these insights. But I suppose the biggest experience I had, and I write about it in The Blissful Breath, was during this very extreme kind of breathing session where we were going quite deep on it. And in the midst of it, I had this revelation about my grandmother was in my mind, in my memory, a very mean person, I had this idea that your grandparents had to be nice, and so she was a very mean person. And in the midst of all of this, I realized that the reason she had come across like that to me as a child was that my grandfather had died when she was young, and she had this fear of being poor, which is true, and as an adult when I look back at it, and that her fear of that came across as this kind of mean-spirited behavior all the time. And in the depths of the breathing, I realized that by me holding on to this story about my granny, the fact I'm actually calling her my granny now is actually a big thing, because I used to call her Vera, But in the midst of that breathing, I realized that me holding on to this story about her being mean and all that kind of stuff was affecting my relationships with the other women in my life, with my wife, with my sister, with my mom. And So I came out of the breathing session and I was totally changed. And in that breathing session, I'd actually seen my granny, aka Vera. I had forgiven her, for what I felt was kind of mean behavior to me as a child. And that was just from breathing. I came up out of the experience and everything was changed. I had this revelation about why she had been like that, this revelation about how it had still been affecting all the relationships in my life. I was able to kind of fix it, for want of a better word, in the breathing. And I came up out of it and I turned to a friend of mine, Isaac, beside me. And I was like, oh, I told him all this. And Isaac had just had a grand breathing session. He had his own experience, but it taught me lots of things. It taught me that the breathing can be extraordinarily profound and very healing. But it also told me that the person beside you is having a totally different experience. And for him, it was just a grand breathing session. He felt none of that. And the other lesson it taught me was that having had this really, really profound experience, the human nature is to crave that again. So the next morning, I said to myself, right, I'm going back down into the depths to do this again, to see what else can happen down there. Which, of course, is the striving, the grasping, the clinging, which the Buddhists, the Buddhists are always talking about. You can't lose what you don't cling to. So if you let go of things, you're free. But I was clinging to this expectation that I wanted this thing again. So I lay down and started doing the breathing again. But of course, the breathing, it wasn't going to happen again. My body wouldn't allow that same intensity of the breathing. So after a few minutes, I got up and thought to myself, okay, there's the lesson. We're different every time we breathe. That happens every now and then. It's not going to happen every day. I shouldn't be looking for it. The more I look for it, the less I'll find it. So you have a full range of experiences with the breathing. But for anybody practicing breathing, conscious breathing, we don't need those experiences for it to have a profound effect on our health, on our mood, on how we behave, how we deal with pressure, how we think. If we move our lungs in a certain way, it influences the brain. The brain influences the biology of the body. Our minds then are influenced as well. So we don't have to have the profound experience to have deep and long-lasting benefits from the breathing. So if somebody's trying to chase that feeling, let the feeling go and just breathe.
We were just talking about your relations, your grandmother, and there was a death in the family recently, with Josie's mother. I wouldn't mind exploring that with you if that was possible.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware of the importance of elders now, even more so. Can you tell us a bit about her?
Yeah. Gags, as we call her, or Gaga, aka Agnes, was an amazing person. She comes from this mountain in Mayo that overlooks the sea, that is literally at the end of the road. You come out to Ballycastle village, you go up a road, up another road, up the mountain, keep going, and at the very end of the road is this cottage tucked in, just in the bottom of the mountain with a little river running by it. And when she was in her teens, she had to leave this paradise of a place and go and work in London. So it used to take her days to get from Ballycastle out to London. And she stayed and lived in London and had a family and businesses in London for maybe 40 years. So she saw a lot of the world in London. And she had a family, 4 children, Josie being one of them. And what really impressed me about Gags was that she was a pioneer in lots of ways. She was a woman in business, which was unusual. She was an Irish woman in business in London, which was even more unusual. And she had to be tough to deal with that. She told us one day that she had a nursing home, and that the intelligence agency in the UK, I don't know if it's MI5 or MI6, whichever one is the internal agency, they kept coming and harassing her about the Irish people working in, this was the 60s or 70s, in her business, saying they were terrorists or whatever it was. And Gags loved smoking, so she'd be standing there smoking the fags, as she called them, looking at these fellas, kind of shooing them off the property, and the strength it took to kind of deal with that kind of stuff. So she was an amazing character, and we were very lucky that just the way things developed, she has lived with us for the last 13 years. So all our children, all they ever knew was that through our kitchen was a little door and I went to another room, and at the back of that was Gags's rooms back there. So they always had Gaga there, So as you said, the importance of elders. Now, most people could not live with their mother-in-law. I had such love for Agnes and we always got on. Now, we didn't always agree with everything. She has a very open mind, but her views on things were often different to mine. But we got on so well, So, and the children loved having a grandparent right there in the house. So when she was so practical in lots of ways. As she was dying, she got a like 4-week kind of prediction from the doctor saying, it's 4 weeks. That's all you have. And at this stage now, she was mid-80s, and all she did was smoke, drink cups of tea, eat white bread with about an inch of butter on it. And there's me drinking kale shakes. But she was up until the point that it started to unwind. She was an unbelievably healthy, vital woman. And I would be sitting in the ice bath on our patio out the back, and Gags would be leaning out the window, smoking her fags out the window, So we had this amazing relationship, and it's unbelievably sad to watch somebody die. You've been there, the grief and the trauma and the shock that comes with that. But being a little bit older now, there's also huge lessons on how to live by watching someone die. So Gags being very practical, we had for the previous maybe year or two, me not knowing that she had some sense that her end was coming. We had been helping her make sure all her things were in order, all her affairs were in order. Now, I thought we were doing it because she had loads of time to go. But somewhere in her, maybe she knew her time was a little shorter. And she had a list of things that she wanted done, and we were going through the list of things as the time was winding down, and her health she was kind of falling apart as we were going. And she had her list of things, and we were working. Maybe 2 days before she died, we had 1 or 2 things left on the list, and they were done. And I was watching her lying there, and she was totally at peace. She was totally at peace with what was going on. She had surrendered. All the things in her list were done. Her husband had died. Sean had died years before. Her son had died years before. All the people that she loved had died. She was the last one of her generation. And watching somebody there totally at peace made me think, my God, how lucky she was. We were all with her when she died. All her affairs were done. She had worked all her life really hard, and she was able to have this peaceful death. But watching her die also made me think about how finite this experience is. Like, you and I are here talking, and somewhere in my mind it nearly feels like she will always be talking. I can always send you a text message or something, or I can always give my child a hug. But they are all finite things. There will be a time when we're not able to talk like this. And in some of the breathing traditions, they don't measure time or a lifetime in time, they measure it in breaths. So in some of the traditions, they feel that everyone's born with a certain number of breaths. And at the end of that number, you're finished. You start your life with your breath. You end it with the last one. So you can see how the breathing practices of the slow, calm breathing kind of kick in there. You have a bit longer to go. And watching Gags die, I was just thought to myself, I know we talk about life being precious and having to enjoy every moment, but it really nailed that into me, that every hug with somebody and I'm not being morbid, but could be the last one. Every time I say goodbye to the people I love, eventually it'll be the last time I ever say it. So that really, Gags in a way, in her own way, was really teaching us in those last few moments to embrace life. So on our mantelpiece we have a fire in the house. It's an old fireplace. And we have Gags in a picture from the 60s in London in a beautiful ball gown. We have 2 candles there. And I see her every day. And, when you look back at someone's life, and they don't have to have a great life or a famous life or anything, but when you see how much people mean to other people, it's inspiring. I feel like watching Gags die has been like a freedom for me to say, oh, fuck this. Whatever things I thought, will I do that? Or, am I afraid of doing this or that? All that's kind of fallen away. I just feel now that I have to fully embrace everything and go for everything. Not sporadically kind of like, oh, I'll do this. But the things that I think important, nothing's holding me back anymore, even if I'm fearful of them. Because the time will come when I don't have the energy. The time will come when my time is done. And when I'm lying there like Gags, hopefully I'm as organized as her and have the list ticked off. But even if I'm not, even if that final moment is traumatic or whatever it is, in that last moment of consciousness, I want to feel that I have given everything. Maybe not got it right. Actually, definitely not got it right every time. But that I gave it all. So I have to thank Gags for those lessons.
Yeah, what a blessing. And so inspiring, so amazing that you're able to acknowledge the blessing that she gave to you in that moment. A lot of people would shy away, and, they have their own issues or hang-ups with death itself, so then they avoid that interaction. So it sounds like a real blessing and a huge development for you as a family.
Yeah.
To be able to be part of that, Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. So moving forward to what's kind of coming up next for you and Breathe with Niall and your offerings, what's exciting you the most that's coming up in the near future?
There's a couple of things that are unbelievably exciting to me, but unfortunately I can't tell you about them yet. And also my second book is coming out later in the year. But there's a couple of things that will become that I could be able to talk about in a few months that are really exciting me. But I suppose ultimately it's about reaching not more people necessarily, but about reaching the people that need it. So by that I mean we'll have all our great events all over Ireland and in the UK as well, but also doing a lot more online work for people who can't be in Ireland. So we're going to be doing weekly breathing classes online. We have a whole breathing program for teenagers and children to help them find a sense of calm and even if they're stressed, teaching them how to breathe in a way that helps them. So we're Josie and I are working on ways in which that we can reach people and help them without us having to be there all the time, because there's only a certain amount of time that we have. So that's exciting to me that we have people in Korea that buy our courses. We have people in Australia and places like that they can engage with what we're doing as well. And that's of course pushed out by the Breathe with Niall podcast and the second podcast that I'm doing, Find the Others, with Brian Penny, the neuroscientist. So so they're all amazing things that that keep me excited for sure.
Yeah, excited and busy, I'd say. Yeah.
Yes.
So where can people kind of keep an eye on you and see your offerings and get involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, just go to breathewithniall.com, breathewithniall.com, and the same on Instagram, Facebook, and even TikTok.
There you go. I only joined TikTok last week. Oh my God. My daughter's like, yeah, and you just keep on swiping. And it's like, I don't want to swipe and I don't want to watch like that. Why would, it's like, and she goes, oh no, you'll be doing that soon now in the forest. I was going, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. But I don't really, and she's like, oh, this controls your feed of what you can see. And I said, I'm just going to go in and do a video and then post it. I'm not going to be watching anything,
I feel the same. And it is a kind of generational thing, I think, as well. But it's also where our practice is. For me, the more distracted I am, the less present I am, the less good I feel. So if I'm fully present and fully in the moment, I feel much better. So when I go onto TikTok, I never suffer from anxiety, but TikTok nearly gives me anxiety because it's so it's just so stimulating, constant. So I go in, we have a little way of doing it, post a little video, don't look at anything, come back out again. So, but it's just another skill. It's just another way of communicating. And that's what I love about something like TikTok that comes along that wouldn't be natural, say, to me, is that it just forces me to think a little more about how to communicate with people about what I'm doing. So it's a new skill.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today. And thank you for sharing parts of you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for letting me in. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you very much, Niall OMhurchu.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
We are so grateful to you for listening and being here with us. You can find more videos on YouTube. We have 5 episodes. If you like what you've heard and seen today, you can check us out in more depth. Our Instagram is The Healing Forest. The website is thehealingforest.ie. Loads of offerings, loads of good stuff. We would love it if you made contact with us and gave us some feedback. See you in the forest.